National Academy of Mobile Electronics is proud to present a series of training videos for the consumer electronics industry. Each video focuses on a specific area of training with information that has been compiled and painstakingly applied over several years. These videos will make a great addition to your video training library, and if you're just getting started, they will save you hundreds of hours of head scratching. So sit back, take notes, and enjoy. Here's Mike Breault.
Hello, my name is Mike Breault, and welcome to the National Academy of Mobile Electronics. NAME has developed a series of highly comprehensive training videos for the mobile electronics industry. Our videos will help the seasoned professional as well as the novice installer to better enhance their installation skills. We hope you enjoy our videos, and if you have any questions regarding any of our other training programs, please feel free to call our toll-free number during business hours. Now, let's get to work. I've been in the mobile electronics industry for over 16 years, serving in several different capacities. One thing I can say about this industry is you can never know too much. A day wouldn't go by when I didn't learn a new trick about installing or a new technique to implement. Our goal here at NAME is to help you reduce the amount of time you spend on an installation by helping you eliminate the time spent on trial and error. This will make you worth more money to both yourself and to your employer. We're confident that the techniques revealed in these videos will prove effective in your quest to build a better career as a mobile electronics specialist.
Woodworking in automotive audio has become very popular in the past decade. Not only are installers asked to have mechanical and electrical skills, but a variety of unrelated skills as well. The installers that can perform woodworking tasks are in high demand. In our video, we will show you several time-saving tricks and techniques that we have learned and compiled over the years. The whole idea behind the training fits in with our production line high-end philosophy and teaching installers how to duplicate their work.
Let's first look at a few examples of some of the uses of woodworking during an automotive audio installation.
A subwoofer enclosure is just one of the many various uses for woodworking applications in an automobile. Here we have a mini truck box which fits behind the seat and delivers a full range of sounds. Note the horn tweeters mounted in the top of the enclosure to enhance high frequencies. Door panels are becoming more popular to house loudspeakers in the doors. With them, you can both match the integrity of the vehicle and even mount multiple speakers if so desired. We will also cover wood bending techniques in our training. Here is a finished example of what you can accomplish. Let's take a look at some various woods and go over a few examples of which woods are optimum for our applications. Here is an example of plywood. It has many fine uses in and around the house, but its fibrous, knotty finish make it an undesirable choice for our woodworking projects. Hardwoods also have their place, but cost is definitely a drawback when it comes to automotive applications, especially since our woodworking projects will be requiring something other than natural finish, so hardwoods aren't necessary. Here we have particle board. Many speaker enclosures are constructed with it for several good reasons. One is its density, which lends to good acoustic characteristics, and the cost is very affordable. Finally, we have medium density fiberboard, or MDF. MDF is quickly becoming one of the most popular choices amongst installers. It is highly compressed and has a paintable surface, which makes it a snap to get a high quality professional finish. Now let's look at a few of the supplies we will be using to accomplish our woodworking projects. Remember, using good quality tools and materials will make a difference in your finished products. Wood glue is the most important fastener we will use while woodworking, so it is important that you choose a good quality brand. Silicone will give us our airtight seal, which is vital when building speaker enclosures. Here is our cure-all for shaping and filling. Most of you may recognize it. Body filler is a great aid in turning your creative imagination into works of art. Clamps often lend that much needed second set of hands for many of our projects. We will demonstrate several uses during the video. This is a sure form. It helps us shape body filler before it is fully cured. Wood chisels are necessary to accomplish various tasks. Here is an ordinary compass. We will show you how to use it to shape the most stubborn contours. Shooter screws and brad nails are a must to ensure strength to all of our woodworking projects. Several different styles and sizes of wood bits and augers are used throughout our endeavors. Putty knives are very useful for mixing and applying body filler during the final stages of our work. You will find many uses for a carpenter's square. Mitering and squaring are two of its more popular uses. Fiberglass mat and polyester resins are a must during our wood bending stage. We go into much more detail about fiberglass techniques in our fiberglass video. Now that we've covered some of the materials and supplies for woodworking, let's get into my favorite area and talk a bit about power tools. I never skimp when it comes to getting tools because professional results come from using professional tools. This is a Bosch jigsaw. In my opinion, it is by far the best jigsaw made. You will use this tool virtually every day in the install bay and in many different applications. I use it to cut wood, plastic, metal, fiberglass, and more. Here we have a Porter cable router. We will demonstrate several uses of this tool throughout the video. The Bosch plunge router is a great tool for industrial-sized jobs, and when coupled with a flush trim bit, it's a must for the duplication of shapes and forms. A laminate trimmer comes in handy with Formica to give your work a professional finish. The finish sander makes quick work of body fillers, fiberglass, and wood finishes. The Makita belt sander gets rid of uneven surfaces to prepare for the finish sander. An air stapler or brad nailer expedite the time spent on assembly and is a very valuable tool. Here is our drill press and belt sander. We will demonstrate uses with both. Jigs make the life of an installer much easier. In order to duplicate your work both time and cost effectively, you must learn how to build and use jigs. The taper jig is very handy when cutting the uneven sides for mini truck boxes. This is a store-bought adjustable taper jig. Here we have a shop-built jig which is used for a specific vehicle. We will cover the construction of this jig during the video. This is the ever-popular circle jig. Of course, it is shop-made, but its flexibility is endless. The table saw is the most popular tool in my install bay. My saw has a very high-quality fence on it, which ensures very accurate cuts. As you can see, the view guide on the fence makes it virtually foolproof and easy to get a perfect cut every time. Under our saw is the blade height adjustment and the blade angle adjustment. The numbers here note the degree of pitch, and the handle on the side adjusts to those numbers. Now let me demonstrate some uses of the table saw as we begin our woodworking projects. But before we begin, remember it is always important to demonstrate good safety habits. Safety goggles and dust masks are very important and should be used whenever using power tools. Also, let me demonstrate how to use a push stick when your cuts bring you too close to the blade. Our first project during our woodworking training, we will learn how to build a mini truck box with a rounded top. During these procedures, we will also demonstrate how to use and build a taper jig, how to cut perfect circles with a router, how to bend wood, how to build a jig to duplicate your work in a fraction of its original time, how to use body fillers, how to use a rabbiting bit to countersink your loudspeakers, the use of the drill press and disc sander, And finally, assembly using a brad nailer. During our enclosure design video, we teach how to plan and draft the measurements of your work. Using a plan drawing of a mini truck box, let's begin by cutting the sides for our enclosure using an adjustable taper jig. Using a rectangular piece of wood, the proper height of your enclosure, and adjusting our taper jig to 14 degrees, which we have already predetermined to be the pitch of this particular enclosure, make one pass through the table saw, and just that quick we have one side of our enclosure. Now if this is a popular box, you're going to want to build a taper jig and keep it alongside with the dimensions hanging in your install bay. Here's how to make short work of a taper jig. First start with the side piece you've already cut. Next, take a square piece of wood and draw a line about 3 inches from the bottom. Put the hypotenuse end of your side against the fence with the small side to the top. Make sure the two pieces are flush at the bottom before pushing them through the saw, and be sure to stop at the line you've drawn. Now line up your line to the blade by flipping your jig piece perpendicular with the fence. Next, line up your fence with the line you've drawn and proceed to cut to the first cut you've made. The next order of business is to cut your jig down to a size easily located on your fence. For instance, if the jig lines up at 10 3/16 inches to get the perfect side that you want, then round off your fence at 10 inches, flip your work around so that the truck box side is against the fence, and then cut the 3/16 inches off the jig. Next, make notations of the dimensions on your jig so the next time you build a similar box, you will know exactly what size rectangle to cut, so you will get two sides out of just one pass through the saw with your fence set at exactly 10 inches. Now that we have our sides, we must take our compass and mark a semicircle at the top and sand it with this sander. To sand our rounded top, simply lay the side on the table of the disc sander and roll it back and forth until you've removed the desired amount down to your markings. Be sure the table is set at 90 degrees to ensure an accurate seat between your front and side pieces. When bending wood using a series of equally spaced curves, we cut our wood within a paper-thin layer from the top. We must first take our side piece along with the piece that is going to be our front piece and mark where the two pieces begin to pull away. At that point, we will make a mark to make our first curve. Use the same process in marking your second curve after your first curve has been completed, and this will be the spacing for the remaining curves. Your blade height to just below the top of your work. Now make your series of curves and look how easy wood bending really is. That we have our front curves cut and sides finished, line your side up to the soon to be finished front board and mark where you will be cutting your angled cut. To determine the angle of the cut, just resort back to the angle in which you cut your first side piece. If you recall, that piece was 14 degrees. Now simply tilt your blade to 14 degrees and proceed to cut your front piece at the mark you've just made. Be sure your front piece is face down when making the cut. See how nicely they fit together? Using the same degree of pitch, let's now cut our bottom piece to the line which we are about to mark on the piece we have designated as our bottom. As you can see, our enclosure is starting to take shape. The final piece to our project is our back, which is simply a straight cut on all four sides. Before we assemble our box, we must first cut all holes in our fronts for speakers and sides for terminal cups. Here is our box side, which we will now drill out the hole for the terminal cup. This wood auger is the best tool I've found to cut through MDF. Insert the bit in your drill press. Next, take a scrap piece of wood and insert it beneath your side to protect both your bit and your drill press table. Be sure to clamp your work down and center your auger on your mark. Now at low speed, proceed to drill down through your work. Isn't that a clean cut? Now let's take our circle jig and attach it to the base of our router. Remember now, when you're routering a hole, you will choose the hole half the distance from the blade for the actual size you want. For instance, a 7-inch hole will require your pilot screw to be 3 1/2 inches away from the blade. Let's determine where we want the center of our hole to be and mark it on the front of the box. The router bit we'll be using will be a 1/4 inch single flute bit. We must now build a jig for cutting holes in our fronts if this box is one we will be duplicating frequently. To cut our circular hole for the subwoofer and build a jig for future use, let's take our front piece and lay it over a 3/4 inch piece of MDF. This piece will become our jig. Next, take small 1/2 inch strips of wood and staple them around the front piece, securing it in place. It is important to keep the strips the same thickness as your work so that the router can pass cleanly. These little 1/2 inch strips do wonders in holding your work in place, and the beauty of this jig is that it's a perfect fit every time this particular vehicle comes in for one of your popular rounded enclosures. Now screw the circle jig to your front piece with a screw long enough to go through the piece below. This will ensure a perfectly round hole once the center of the front piece is fully cut through. Now let's countersink our hole using the rabbiting bit. The purpose for the countersink is to allow the woofer a flush fit to the front of the enclosure. It's a fairly simple procedure. This is a close-up of the rabbiting bit, and as you can see, it has a bearing on it which ensures a perfect countersink every time. Once installed, simply adjust the depth in which you would like the cut and let your router do the work. Here's the way a speaker should fit that has been properly countersunk. What we want to do here is flip the jig over with the box front still in place. Next, clamp your work down securely. Drill a hole in your jig large enough for your router bit to fit through. The last step we must complete with our box front and jig is to transfer the hole from the box front to the jig so that in future applications our boxes will be built quickly and consistently. Here is a close-up of the bit we will be using for this cut. It is a 1/2 inch flute trim bit. Note the bearing. This is what follows the shape, making all sorts of duplications possible in a fraction of the time it takes to trace and cut with a jigsaw. Now adjust the depth of your router so that the bearing on the flush trim bit will ride along the edge of the hole previously routed in the front. Now router your hole. And now you have a jig to duplicate the front of your box for a specific pickup. To transfer the hole to the right or left side of your box, simply load it into your jig front side down for one side and front side up for the other. This will create a mirror image. Now that we've cut all our holes, let's move on to the assembly of our enclosure. We'll start with the sides, front and bottom. First, we'll take our wood glue and attach the bottom to our sides with the brad nailer. Be sure to get the flushest fit possible to avoid uneven fits and unneeded sanding and filling later on. Also, make sure the mitered edge on the bottom lines up with the pitch on the side piece. Next, we'll fill our kerfs with wood glue. Keep it a few inches from the edge. It will work its way out when you close up the kerfs. Glue around the front where it will be attached to the sides and bottom. Begin by squaring up the front of the box to the sides and bottom, then proceed to nail. Some glue will run out of the kerfs when you fold the top over and close them up. I usually take a ball-peen hammer over my brad nails if they protrude at all. As you can see, a little glue was forced out of the kerfs, but once dried, if they all close tightly, the kerf will be as strong as the wood itself. If your kerfs are open in the least bit, and/or you are using your enclosure in a sealed box fashion, there are other precautions or steps you may take. Let's cover them at this time. First, let's apply our silicone around the inside edge of our enclosure. This should be done regardless of the type of enclosure it is. Now we're going to reinforce the kerfs with a layer of 4-ounce fiberglass mat. For more information about fiberglass layup, you might consult our fiberglass video. The next step in finishing the front of the box, I will usually open the kerfs on the front with a wood chisel and fill them with a body filler. This is done to add strength and cosmetic integrity. I've done enclosures and other projects both ways, and depending on the finish you will choose may depend on the degree of surface finish. Next, we will mix some body filler. Be sure to follow the instructions when mixing body filler and always compensate your mix based on the temperature you are working in. Now fill your kerf with a thin layer, evenly spreading it across the top, and fill in the sides, which are also open. Once the body filler is dried, we'll then attach the back of the enclosure and seal it with silicone through the hole cut in the front. Just put it on the end of a wet finger and apply it around all of the edges. If you do have any uneven surfaces that need rough sanding, you might start first with the belt sander. Then, follow that up with a finishing sander to get the desired results you want. As you can see, a rounded surface sure does add a great deal of cosmetic appeal to a mini truck box, and I'm sure you will find many other applications for wood bending in the days to come. Okay, so far we've covered the table saw usage, several different uses of different routers, how to build and use various jigs, how to bend wood, and finishing your work with body fillers. Now, let's move on to our next stage of woodworking training. Part 2, we will learn contouring, jigsawing, how to build a 5-sided box, and duplicating patterns. First, we'll begin here behind the seat of a mini pickup truck. If you have ever built a 5-sided box before, you know how the contours of the rear wall and sometimes floor can pose as a problem and take some long hours to tackle. We'll show you how to cut the time you spend on these projects into fractions. Here is another area where creating a pattern to duplicate your work will come in very handy if your bay builds a lot of 5-sided enclosures. We will begin by simply transferring our contoured wall pattern onto a strip of wood that in this particular truck will serve for both the bottom and the top of the box. We will save this pattern for future use to eliminate the first step of building this enclosure the next time it comes in. Our installers have been known to build these enclosures in as little as 10 minutes with accurate patterns. The procedure begins with a basic compass and a piece of MDF long enough to cover the span of your enclosure. I will usually put a piece of heat shrink tubing over the tip of my compass to keep it from scratching the painted surface of the vehicle. Next, have a coworker or a friend help by holding your piece of MDF in place evenly spaced to where your enclosure will be placed. This is the only time you will really need a second set of hands during this procedure, and in the future, once the pattern is created, this box is a snap to build by yourself. Now here's the important part. Take your compass and press it against the rear wall, keeping the pencil perpendicular to the wall. Slowly and accurately run the compass across the contour, keeping it perpendicular as you go. It is very important to take your time when tracing this contour, because once it is finished, you'll have the pattern that may be duplicated time and time again. I have used this technique over and over to produce several different patterns for such things as door panels, amp racks, beauty boards, and trim panels. It works ideally for both accuracy and saving time. Now we're going to take our pattern and cut carefully along the line using our Bosch jigsaw. If you recall, I stated earlier, this in my opinion is the best jigsaw available. Okay, now clamp your work down using 2 clamps, one close to the center because you'll be moving it outward once you've cut to that point, and the other one close to the far end. Now, taking your time, proceed to cut slowly along that line that you've transferred from the rear wall of the truck. Once you've reached the first clamp, move it to the outside of your work and continue to cut your wood. Now that we've finished our cut, we have a pattern in which we will write the make and model of the truck and save this in our install bay. Make sure your cut is accurate before beginning the duplication process. The next step is to transfer your shape from your pattern to the top and bottom of your enclosure efficiently. To do that, simply take the piece that is going to be the top of your enclosure and clamp it to the top of your pattern. The clamps position here is much like that of the jigsaw section and will be needed to be moved when you get to that point. Be sure when you move your clamps that the two pieces remain aligned before you reclamp. Next, take your plunge router with your flush trim bit, set the depth for the bearing to ride along your pattern piece, and proceed to cut. Now see how easily we can duplicate our work using a router. This step can be used in doing the bottom piece, and tracing shapes with the router can also be used for many other woodworking tasks such as door panels, etc. Alright, now that we have the top and bottom out of the way, let's cut the sides with the technique we learned earlier using our taper jig. Before we go any further, let's check the fits of our top, bottom, and sides in the truck. Here we have the top, now the bottom, and here's how the side looks in the truck. Now, after assembling the sides, top, and bottom using wood glue and brad nails, we will then attach little L-shaped clamps around our enclosure to secure it in the vehicle. Be sure they are all mounted inside the enclosure to keep them well hidden during mounting. See how nicely our enclosure fits into the vehicle? The last thing we must do before screwing in our enclosure is to seal any and all air pockets using silicone. Since our enclosure has such nice tight fit, we won't be wasting too much silicone. Okay, now that we have beaded our silicone all the way around the edge, we are ready to screw our enclosure into place. Before screwing your enclosure into place, take your carpenter square and make sure your corners of your enclosures are square. Now screw your enclosure in using short sheet metal screws through your brackets. When the box is in place, I like to cover my brackets with silicone. Here is a shot of our frame fully screwed into place. Next we need our front piece, which will have the woofers holes already cut into it using the procedure we learned earlier in the video. Be sure to miter the top and bottom of the front piece to ensure the proper fit. Now we're going to put a bead of silicone around the edge of the back of your enclosure to ensure a good tight seal. Damping material and other materials may be used in this enclosure to reduce panel vibration. Next, secure your front panel using the brad nailer. Make sure you always keep your air nailer perpendicular to the piece being nailed. This will keep nails from curling out the side. And there you have it. This is what is known as a five-sided box. It is very popular in Southern California. They are extremely effective and are used for various reasons. One reason is to save space so the customer can move his or her seat all the way back, and secondly, to maximize the amount of airspace available by using part of the truck as the enclosure. Now, let's move on to part 3 of our video, in which we will simply be covering a few miscellaneous tasks using woodworking in the install bay. We will cover countersinking, using a sureform, mitering, finding angles, and creating edges using a router. First, let's talk about countersinks for a totally different application.
The drill press has a variety of different uses in the install bay. One of my favorite uses is that of a countersink for buttons when I'm vinyl wrapping door panels.
The purpose for countersinking the buttons is to flush them out with the surface of your panel. So it is important to set your depth gauge properly. Next, clamp your work down with a piece of wood beneath it to ensure you don't damage your bit or drill press. To countersink buttons, we will use a wood bit about 1/8 inch larger than the diameter of the buttons to account for the vinyl. A countersink like this is used for a panel to look like this. Next, let's go over countersinking screws for a permanent finish. When I say a permanent finish, I mean one in which you won't be removing the screws ever in the future. This is done for several reasons. Most of them are for finishing, and there's never a need to remove your screws. First, start by drilling a hole in your top board big enough to where your screws will not bind when joining the two pieces together. Next, take your countersink bit and drill into your holes to countersink your screw heads. Here's a close-up of what your countersink bit does. Once we have screwed our work together, we will proceed with the body filler to fill in the holes. Once your body filler has set up to a point where it is firm but not too hard, you're going to want to take your sureform and grate the top off of it. Remember, there is some shrinkage in body filler, so if you're going to be painting this piece, make sure additional fill isn't needed once it is fully cured. Now, let's look at a process to finish an edge using our laminate trimmer with a 45-degree trim bit. Simply take the piece that you wish to trim and run the laminate trimmer over the edge while letting the bearing follow the edge. Let's take a look at a few bits used in edge trimming. Here is a 1/2 inch roundover bit to give you a perfectly rounded finish. Here is the 45-degree bit, which we will be demonstrating with. Notice that these bits are carbide tipped, which is good since they will encounter a brad nail now and then. It is a good practice to avoid wood screws at all costs. This will ensure a long life for your router bits. Now we'll trim the edge with a 45-degree trimmer. One thing I would like to point out is always move your routers and trimmers in the opposite direction in which your blade is turning. Here's the results. This gives your edge a nice finish, as do the roundover bits. To find more creative edgers, visit your local woodworking supply store. The last thing I would like to cover is how to find our angles using an angle finder and a protractor. It is a fairly simple procedure. Take the angle in which you are trying to find and lock your angle finder at the desired pitch. Next, line your angle finder up running in a straight line with your carpenter's square like this. Now read the number on the protractor side of the carpenter's square to find your degree of pitch. Now, when you are mitering two pieces of wood together and want to butt up the two against each other to get a perfect fit, simply find the angle you desire and divide the two, and that will give you the degree of pitch that both pieces should be cut. For instance, if a 45-degree angle is what you are trying to achieve, then the two pieces cut at 22.5 degrees will equal 45 degrees when the two ends are butted up against each other. Alright, let's recap what we've learned. In part 1, we learned how to bend wood, how to cut perfect circles using a router, how to build various jigs, how to countersink speakers, and how to use jigs to duplicate your work. In part 2, we taught you how to quickly come up with difficult contours, how to trace and duplicate your work time and cost effectively, and how to build a 5-sided box. In part 3, we learned various types of countersinks and their uses, how to use body filler and a Sureform, how to trim an edge with router bits, and how to miter and find angles.
That about wraps it up for this video. Good luck applying your newfound skills, and remember, always have fun, keep an open mind, and make lots of money. I'm Mike Breault for the National Academy of Mobile Electronics. Goodbye for now. Be safe.
Hello, this is Mike Breault again. I'm here to tell you about the many training aids that NAME offers to you as a mobile electronics connoisseur. NAME currently has 3 sets of training videos. Our intermediate set consists of basic electronics, automotive electrical, tools and safety, and installation techniques. Our advanced series consists of electrical, auto sound, security, and cellular. And finally, our Audio Architect series. It includes woodworking, fiberglass, upholstery, motorization, enclosure design, which comes with this reference guide including several formulas, and rounding out the Architect series is the Miracle Door Panel video. NAME also offers a SpeakerCAD software, which will assist you in building enclosures, putting the tedious task of calculations at your fingertips for the following things. It will derive teal small parameters, calculate optimum sealed enclosures, tune ported enclosures, calculate vent lengths, plot a graph of response, and help you design 6, 12, 18, and 24 dB per octave crossovers. This software can be yours for only $79.95 if you have already purchased any of our videos from NAME. Finally, I would like to tell you about NAME's certification program. NAME will allow you to become a certified audio architect in the privacy of your own living room. It's simple. Just view all of the Audio Architect videos, answer 150 questions, and get 85% or better, and you will receive a plaque recognizing you as an audio architect from the National Academy of Mobile Electronics.
Also, you'll receive this colorful t-shirt just for taking the test.
This concludes our video presentation. For suggestions for new videos or the release of other training videos, call NAME at 1-800-869-8448.